Apparently, my last post ruffled some feathers, but I really don't care. Landlords are literally sharks. They are eating people alive just because they can. They are raising rent just because they can. I personally think there needs to be a law to where, like, say this landlord owns this house outright. I think there needs to be a law that they're only allowed to charge like an X amount of the home's value, not 15, 16, 17, $1,800 a month just because it's in a nice neighborhood and everybody.
What kind of socialist nonsense is this? So, wait a minute. If a person pays off their home or if a person owns something outright, then they need to be penalized and they can't charge whatever value that they deem necessary. Now, remember, you don't have to live there, right? But somebody should be penalized because their home is paid off? Get the hell out of here, bro.
Else around is charging the same. And don't get me started on rental agencies that are hiking up the price because they get a cut of it. And then you have investors that are buying houses or foreclosures for pennies on the dollar and doing basic upgrades and then turning around and selling it for, or not selling it, renting it for $1,500 to $2,000 a month.
All right, hold on. Let me just give some insight. So, first of all, the real estate agencies have nothing to do with the price that the person charges. The property management company gets 10%, sometimes a little bit more, depending on what the property is and all of that stuff. They may get a percentage in order to manage the property, the day to day operations. Most people that own single family homes are not institutional investors. They are a person that own one property, maybe two if they moved out and they couldn't sell it or they don't want to sell it. And so they decided to rent it out, but they are not rich. All right. They are not rich whatsoever. Secondly, you can't take your socialist liberal ways because you don't like what it is that you got to pay. If you don't like it, you can either go and buy one yourself or you can go and move into a property that's more affordable for you. But you don't get to live in the best places and then get to choose what you want to pay. That's not how it works. See, I come from a space where we actually had to live in the hood. We lived in the hood until we could do better. And we wasn't afforded the right to be able to go out and live in a phenomenal neighborhood but not have to pay the expenses that come along with it. This is such a privileged, entitled mindset that these people need to take over to Canada and go and live over there. Go live somewhere where they okay with your socialist ways and your socialist lifestyle, but I'd be damned if I let somebody tell me what it is that I can charge for my property. And again, that doesn't mean that it's going to get rented. It don't mean that people can afford it. I choose to keep my properties at a certain amount because I think that it makes good business sense. And it also lends itself to a person that chooses to live there longer term and raise their kids in a really great property, right? But that even comes with some caveats because, a lot of times, I may not necessarily make as much as I could make. Now, I will give you all this that there are some investors that, because, this is proliferated in the real estate industry for a long time, in which they can do whatever it is that they want to do with it, but it's almost like an arbitrage, right? So, one of the things that people do is they buy the properties. Often at times, it's also multi-unit, right? It could be a big apartment complex, or it could just be a smaller multi-unit property, three, four, five, unit property, right? And they buy it and they do some repairs or some fixing up of it, charge more rent, and then when they go back to the banks will then lend them money against the property based off of whatever the increased value of the property, and that is proven by how much that they are able to acquire more in rent and if they are able to occupy the property. So, its occupancy rate plays a role, and they're able to get more money out of the property, which they then, transfer over into getting more property. And so they then, life hack with regard to that. I don't do that because, first of all, I don't work with banks. And secondly, I'm not looking to increase the rent just because. If I wind up increasing the rent, it's because my costs increase, property taxes go up, insurance go up, repair costs go up. There's a lot of things. I'm renovating a property that somebody lived in for damn near 16, 17 years and they just recently moved out. And I never even increased the rent for the entire time that they was in the property, and they raised their kids in it. And so now they downsizing because, whatever, so on and so forth, lifestyle choices. But it's costing me upwards of $150,000 to renovate the property itself. Now, I am blessed and I make a lot of money, and I also have a different strategy when it comes to generating revenue or increasing assets and long term valuation and all of that when it comes to my properties. And so I have been profitable, but I can be way more profitable. But the fact of the matter is, it's my choice. It's my choice because it's my property and I pay the property taxes and I don't have a mortgage on it. I bought the property. I can choose to do what I want with it. If I want to leave it right now, I'm not getting anything from it. And it's taken about 4 months for me to upgrade it and change it, but I'm not getting anything, but I still have to pay the property taxes and whatever costs insurance that comes with that property. But this is such an entitled mentality. And I hate it when people sit there and tell you what you should be able to do. And this is one of the reasons why New York is fall, right? This is one of the reasons because a lot of landlords in New York won't even renovate their properties, or they won't even rent out the property because of the limits and the laws that is preventing them from being able to increase the rents. And so they don't even see it as worth it. They'd rather just let the building sit empty than force themselves to rent it out to people, which also lends itself to the increase in prices when you are able to find a place that you have to rent. It's not worth it and it doesn't make sense.
In what world does that make sense? Mind you, some of these landlords and investors are living in brand new homes because they know that they can raise rent to a completely unaffordable amount.
Y'all pocket watching now? Y'all looking at their homes?
So the renters can not afford, so the renters can fund their luxury in their brand new homes. There needs to be affordable housing because, especially for single income families, how is that affordable for anybody? They're stuck having to rent in a shitty ass neighborhood just because it's affordable. They should be able to rent in a nice neighborhood for their children. But not renters, landlords and investors make it almost impossible. There's not affordable housing. They're like, oh, I bought this house for, say, 90K several years ago and it's paid off, but just because it's in a nice neighborhood, I'm going to rent it for 1500 plus. Even though my mortgage was 400 and something dollars, but I no longer have a mortgage anymore. Make that fucking make sense. Why is there
This is
not
the
a
dumbest
law
post I've ever seen.
in place where landlords, investors, flippers, whatever you are, have to abide by a certain rule and only charge like X amount of what the home's value is? Yet, they don't have any rules. They're allowed to just
You literally can just go and move to New York or Los Angeles on the West Coast or on the East Coast, and you can have all of this that your heart desires.
hike it up whenever they want because, they want other people to fund their luxury. Meanwhile,
This is crazy.
renters have to continue renting because how the fuck are they able to save to become a homeowner? They're not. They can't because rent eats people alive. I cannot stress this enough. There needs to be a law put in place because renting is just becoming not a.
So basically, we have to subsidize your bad choices and your lifestyle choices so you can stuff more food and get more DoorDash in your face. And so we got to make the adjustment, or other people got to make the adjustment because you can't manage your finances effectively. And you chose to have children that you couldn't afford. Let me know what y'all. I hate this entitlement mentality. Let me know what y'all think inside of the comments. Make sure y'all tap into the Patreon link is in the description. T. Henley, 40% off your first order, 20% off for life. I love you. I appreciate you. I'll let you guys later. Peace.